in the most sacred burial ground on earth, a valley reserved only for the eternal rest of Egypt's mighty pharaohs. A discovery was made that shattered over a century of archaeological rules. A tomb was unearthed, not of a king, but of a commoner. And inside, the man's mummy was so perfectly preserved it looked as if he'd been buried only yesterday. But this was no ordinary man. His presence in the Valley of the Kings was an honor almost unheard of, sparking a question that would ignite a decades-long firestorm. Who was this man, and what secret allowed him to be buried among the gods? The answer some have proposed is so shocking, it threatens to rewrite history itself. The year was 1905. Archaeologist James Quibble was excavating in the Valley of the Kings when his team stumbled upon an undiscovered tomb, a rare event even then. This wasn't a grand, sprawling royal complex. It was a smaller, hidden tomb designated KV46. As they breached the entrance, they were met with a stunning sight: gilded coffins, a war chariot gleaming with gold, alabaster jars, and intricate funerary furniture lay perfectly preserved. The tomb belonged to a man named Yuya and his wife Tuyet. They were the parents of Queen Tai, the powerful wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III. But despite this royal connection, their burial in the valley was an extraordinary privilege. However, the initial shock of the find soon gave way to a deeper mystery. It wasn't the treasure that was the most startling part of the discovery. It was the man himself. The Egyptian Antiquities Service called in one of the best minds of the time, Sir Grafton Elliot Smith, a brilliant anatomist with unmatched experience in examining royal mummies. As he began his work on Yuya, he noticed something was wrong. The features laid out before him didn't belong to an Egyptian. Yuya was exceptionally tall for the era, towering over his native Egyptian counterparts. His facial structure and skull shape were different. Most strikingly, he had a prominent aquiline nasal feature, completely distinct from the typical depiction of ancient Egyptians. Smith's official report sent a ripple through the academic world. Yuya was almost certainly a foreigner. The evidence was undeniable, but that only deepened the enigma. Who was this outsider? And how did he rise to become the father-in-law of a pharaoh and be granted a place among kings? The answer wouldn't surface for nearly 80 years, when a controversial theory would bring Yuya's story roaring back to life. In 1987, Egyptian scholar Ahmed Osman published a book that would divide the world of Egyptology. Its title was *Stranger in the Valley of the Kings*, and its central claim was explosive. Osman declared that the world had been misidentifying Yuya all along. He argued that this mysterious foreigner, with his high status and strange name, was none other than the biblical and Quranic prophet Joseph. Suddenly, the strange mummy in the Cairo Museum was at the center of a debate that pitted ancient scripture against modern science. Osman claimed the proof had been hiding in plain sight for decades, just waiting for someone to connect the dots. And the connections he made were so compelling they were impossible to ignore. The first piece of the puzzle, according to Osman, was the name itself. Yuya has no clear meaning in the ancient Egyptian language. Scribes even spelled it in several different ways, a common practice when trying to phonetically write a foreign name. Osman proposed that Yuya was the Egyptian attempt to write Yosef. He further theorized that Yuya could be an abbreviation, where U stands for Joseph and Ya for his father, Jacob. The name was the key. From there, the rest of the evidence began to fall into place. When archaeologists entered Yuya's tomb, they found a stunning golden necklace and a magnificent state-of-the-art war chariot. In the Bible, when Joseph correctly interprets the Pharaoh's dream, he is rewarded with 3 things: the Pharaoh's ring, a golden chain for his neck, and the 2nd royal chariot in all of Egypt. The 2 most significant gifts were sitting right there in Yuya's tomb. Even more bizarre, a papyrus scroll found near the mummy reportedly spoke of 7 cows, a direct and chilling echo of the very dream that launched Joseph to power. But the clues didn't stop with the artifacts. Osman then turned his attention to the titles and inscriptions carved into Yuya's coffins. They described him as Father of the God, a title often interpreted as father-in-law to the pharaoh, who was considered a living god. He was also named Master of the Horse, which meant he was in charge of the royal chariots, the most advanced military technology of the time. Other titles included the King's Confidant and the Beloved of God. Osman argued these weren't just standard honorifics. They were a perfect job description for the prophet Joseph. Joseph was a wise advisor, the pharaoh's most trusted confidant, and was given charge over the storehouses and assets of Egypt, including its powerful chariot corps. He was, for all intents and purposes, the 2nd most powerful man in the land. The titles on Yuya's coffin weren't just honoring a nobleman. They were telling the story of the man who saved Egypt from famine. What happened next, however, seemed to elevate the theory from intriguing to undeniable. When observers looked upon the face of Yuya's mummy, they were struck by its appearance. Even after thousands of years, the mummy was remarkably handsome, with a powerful and dignified presence. In religious texts, Joseph is legendary for his extraordinary beauty. But it was the mummy's condition that truly stunned everyone. Yuya's mummy is widely considered the single best-preserved mummy ever discovered, looking more lifelike than even the great pharaohs buried nearby. To believers of the theory, this wasn't the result of superior embalming techniques. It was a sign of divine protection. They claimed that a higher power had preserved the body of its prophet, keeping him safe from both the ravages of time and the hands of tomb robbers. The physical evidence, the titles, the artifacts, and the mummy's miraculous preservation all seemed to point to one unbelievable conclusion. But just as the case for Yuya as Joseph seemed ironclad, the world of mainstream archaeology prepared to strike back with a vengeance. Prominent Egyptologists, like the famous doctors Zahi Hawass, publicly refuted Osman's theory, calling it nothing more than fantasy. And they came armed with hard, documented evidence that began to pull the theory apart, piece by piece. First, they addressed Yuya's origin. Ancient records clearly state that Yuya and his wife Tuya were not foreigners at all. They hailed from the Egyptian city of Akhmim, where they were part of a powerful and influential noble family. Their Egyptian lineage was well documented. His high status wasn't a mystery. It was the direct result of his daughter Tai marrying the pharaoh, honoring the king's father-in-law with a burial in the Valley of the Kings, while Re was a logical sign of respect and love from a devoted pharaoh to his beloved wife. His titles, like Master of the Horse, were also standard for a high-ranking nobleman of his position. The foundation of Osman's theory that Yuya was a mysterious foreigner was built on sand, and the evidence against him was about to become a flood. The final nail in the coffin for the theory lay within the very tomb that started it all. If Yuya were the monotheistic prophet Joseph, his burial would have reflected his beliefs in one singular God. But it was the exact opposite. Yuya's coffins, both inside and out, are covered in spells from the Book of the Dead, a collection of ancient Egyptian pagan rituals designed to help the deceased navigate the underworld and be judged by the god Osiris. The walls of his tomb were adorned with depictions of numerous Egyptian gods and goddesses, all part of the complex polytheistic religion of the pharaohs. This presented an undeniable contradiction. Why would a devout prophet who served one god allow himself to be mummified and buried in a tomb that was essentially a shrine to idolatry? It made no sense. The very act of pharaonic mummification was a deeply religious ritual tied to beliefs that were in direct opposition to Joseph's faith. The evidence was overwhelming. The man in the tomb was an Egyptian nobleman, not a Hebrew prophet. So, was the mystery solved? Archaeologically, yes. The evidence strongly indicates that Yuya was a powerful Egyptian courtier who was given a great honor. But the legend of the stranger in the Valley of the Kings persists for a reason. The theory, though debunked, touches on a powerful human desire to find tangible proof of ancient stories and to connect the worlds of history and faith. The perfectly preserved man in the golden coffin forces us to confront the line between fact and belief. Was he simply a beloved father-in-law or a prophet hiding in plain sight? The tomb has yielded its treasures and its body, but the final verdict on the man inside seems destined to remain buried in the sands of time, forever fueling our imagination.